Articles online have this kind of digital voyeurism to them because they're about like people who are trying to like broach into some sort of interesting analytical topic as has kind of ubiquitized itself on the internet. Things are more analytical, more kind of subjective, broaching subjects like you have sorts of classes. However, at the same time, you have that analytical broaching, digital voice. It's like just kind of a do-si do around those subjects. Like, that's really what bothers me about nerd culture, for instance. Because it's like, how can you talk about being a fan of something rather than that something, but you end up talking about being a fan of something like the debris of that something and your kind of habits watching it and the auxiliary media to a point where it's just kind of like you're not talking about things of substance. So the way you talk about them, the level of concept is shit. So this particular fandom is parenting, and the nerds in this fandom are rather controlling, rather waspy, sort of like yuppies, but they're not young, and they're not urban, and they're not professionals. They're not very good at what they do. They don't have to be. They will all live in the suburbs, and they're all like 40-year-old, 80-year-olds. And so this one thing I'm reading is digital minimalism for parents. Now the screen is brighter because it occupies more and more of the screen. This is a quaint video. This is a boring video. This is just like this fucking article. It's just so fucking boring. But hopefully it's actually like broaching things fragmentally, right? With that eye roll, for instance, and you're like, wow, this fucking dumb lib cuck sure has a quaint way of being like a pussyfooting confrontative with that tepid flair to his voice. One one subject this broaches, which I think is interesting, is instead of digital social media, you have analog social media, which is how I feel about it. Yeah, analog. It's like uncountable kind of ways you can do, but you just end up doing. Like when you're speaking, for instance, right? You're gonna say words anyway. There's not much kind of like stress as to how you're gonna phrase it. But when you're writing down, it's kind of like there's more of a sieve to how you rate, and it's gonna kind of like everyone's rating voice is gonna be kind of weird and a bit like arcane because it much more kind of like gets kind of the shrapnel of thought in there, much more of the explosion, because you can represent more of that turn-based like ineffable thought sludge into it, right? So I think in that aspect, like communicating with people physically is good, as well as because it makes this stuff we're talking about more physical, right? And that's kind of what needs to be stressed more. It's not about really intimacy, what the digital analog being real world verbal communication divide is. Like, take for instance this video, or rather, this video as a communication with myself, which it feels like FaceTime or I don't know, voice chat in a Discord. I don't know if Discord even is like going out of fashion, or in a, like, what was that thing I never use? That other thing. You see, if you don't really have to do things with people if you talk to them over the internet. But if you're near people, then you feel the need to do things with them. There's action. It's not about people having less of a face, though, of course, like, it's less complexity of expression, of course. It's just, I've never had that much complexity of expression myself. Like, my emotions, I feel, are very flat enough. It's just, I bullshit my way through everything. So it's this very complex web of bullshit. That's the problem, really. No, is this a good article? I think this was a relatively interesting video, but it might be slow. Yeah.